Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, more extremists have been giving themselves up in northeastern Nigeria after a ramping up of aerial attacks on their camps by the military. It credits its crackdown in Borno State for the surrender of dozens of ISWAP fighters and their families. Also, as the excitement of the Africa Cup of Nations winds down, football fans in the host country Cameroon will be hoping that the investment into infrastructure will mean big things for the game going forward. That's not always been the case. Our correspondents report from two-time former hosts Gabon. And at the age of 92, a Malawian musician finds fame on TikTok. The attention has even led to dinner with the president and a young, socially media savvy base. But first, the Nigerian military says that there's been a wave of surrenders of extremist fighters and their families. At least 104 people linked to the Islamic State West Africa province have given themselves up over the last few days. 55 were children. Authorities claim that the defections were because of intensified airstrikes on ISWAP camps in Borno State. Several senior commanders have reportedly been killed around Mate near Lake Chad. ISWAP split from Boko Haram insurgents in 2016. Last year, the UN reckoned that since 2009, over 350,000 people had died as a direct or indirect result of the insurgency in the northeast. Sam Olokoya tells us more about these latest surrenders.
104 persons made up of jihadists and their families have surrendered to the Nigerian army. The military says the jihadists are members of the IS-linked Islamic State West African Province, also known as ISWAP. Those who surrendered consist of 22 males, 27 females, and 55 children. The surrender took place in Damboa in Borno State. This is the latest case where jihadists and their families have surrendered in large numbers to the Nigerian army. About 17,000 jihadists have surrendered in recent years. The Nigerian military says the massive surrender of jihadists is an indication that it is winning the war against them. But winning the war against jihadists in Nigeria may not come so easily. The jihadists, who mainly operate in northeast Nigeria, often raid villages to forcefully conscript fighters. This explains why they do not seem to have suffered any substantial loss of members, even though many of their fighters have surrendered. ISWAP is also boosting its strength by training a new generation of child soldiers. Some of its videos showed children, some of them as young as 10, that have been trained to execute prisoners. ISWAP and Boko Haram are waging a violent campaign aimed at introducing Islamic rule in Nigeria. The insurgency has continued for more than 12 years, with 350,000 people killed. About 3 million people have been displaced by the insurgency.
Samuel Okoye there for us. Now, Ghana's fined the Spanish company that operated a truck that exploded and killed 13 people last month. The vehicle had been transporting explosives owned by Madrid-based Maxam Corps when it collided with a motorbike and caused a devastating explosion. Ghana's lands ministries accused Maxam of violating storage and transport laws and fined it $6 million for regulatory breaches and damages. Maxam said that the local transport company it had contracted is responsible for the code breaches, but said that it will pay the fines to continue operating. Now, on Tuesday, military prosecutors in the trial for the murder of revolutionary leader Thomas Sankara called for a 30-year jail sentence for former Burkina President Blaise Compaoré. He's accused of masterminding the assassination of his predecessor in 1987 and is being tried in absentia. Sankara was an anti-imperialist figure who was, along with 12 colleagues, gunned down amidst a coup that brought his former friend Compaoré to power. The trial was briefly suspended after a coup earlier this year and resumed last week. At the request of the defence, it's now been adjourned until March 1st. Senegal's national football team has been awarded cash and land by President Macky Sall for their victory at the Africa Cup of Nations. On Tuesday, the squad was feted at the presidential palace and appointed to the prestigious Order of the Lion. They were also given about 76,000 euros each and plots in Dakar and the city of Diamniadio. The win was Senegal's first after 50 years of trying and has reinvigorated the love of the game in the country. Now, the tournament was hosted by Cameroon this year, and the expense and timeline of preparations is always closely watched. Former hosts have, though, been left with white elephants and stadiums that see little use once the euphoria of AFCON is over. Gabon hosted in 2012 and 2017 at the cost of around an estimated €1 billion. Many of its specially built sites are now in a pretty bad way, as our correspondents report.
The Sino-Gabonese Friendship Stadium in Libreville is on the verge of collapse. It's been abandoned for 4 years now, and equipment has fallen into disrepair.
It was beautiful to see. Look how it looks today.
Belek is in total shock when he visits the stadium. The sports journalist has not been to this 40,000 capacity site since the 2017 Africa Cup of Nations. Built just 10 years ago, the stadium was supposed to be a major addition to the country's sports infrastructure. Instead, a few months ago, it was being used as a COVID-19 test center.
It was a place that inspired a certain pride. There were journalists from all over the world. And when they were there, Gabon was valued. Today, when I come back and see that, it's sad.
A few kilometers away, the largest and one of the oldest of the country's stadiums has also fallen on hard times. Even though the government invested nearly 100 billion CFA francs, about 154 million euros into its renovation, the Omar Bongo Stadium has never been refurbished. Local youth now use the abandoned infrastructure for amateur football matches. But just like the maintenance works at the stadium, the Gabonese National Championship has been stalled for 2 years now. Gabon has hosted the African Cup of Nations twice over the last decade. Football fans had hoped to see more progress for the sport.
When we have something historic like this, we must be able to fight to rehabilitate it, because it's the history of several generations. It's the history of Gabon, it's the history of Gabonese football. What is the logic today behind building infrastructure that are not used for domestic competitions? The Minister of Sports should fix it.
Gabon spent over 700 billion CFA francs for the organization of 2 African Nations Cups in 2012 and 2017. However, the lack of local championships has paralyzed the country's stadiums and football. Gabon's sports minister did not respond to our request for comments.
Well, Lake Kivu in East Africa covers a bed of so much toxic methane that it's called a killer lake. Each eruption of the nearby Nyiragongo volcano raises fears that the gas may escape and poison the neighbouring towns and cities. But despite the dangers, one energy firm has seen an opportunity to transform the gas into electricity.
Lake Kivu's vast waters form the border between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And in the middle lies a power plant that creates electricity from deadly gas. Methane and carbon dioxide have accumulated over thousands of years during volcanic eruptions of Mount Nyiragongo. 2 million lives are at risk if the gas were to escape to the surface. That is why it is called the Killer Lake. Only 2 other such lakes exist in the world, both in Cameroon.
The risk with this kind of lake is that we have oversaturation of gas in the water, and that it may trigger what we call a limnic eruption, which will create waves, tsunami at surface, and so on. And in the 80s in Cameroon lakes, it killed more than 1,000 people. So we don't want that it happens here.
And it is not a theoretic threat. Last year, Nyiragongo erupted again, pushing a second wave of lava deep into the earth, under the lake itself. Engineers considered a shutdown of the Kivu Watt power plant, but the firm banks on transforming this risk into an opportunity.
So removing this gas, if it's done correctly, may help to reduce the risk of a limnic eruption.
Kivu Watt provides around 30% of Rwanda's annual electricity. Ironically, the operators say it is even green energy.
Kivu Watt is 5 to 6 times less polluting in terms of carbon emission to a traditional or conventional peat power plant.
Experts say it will take centuries to deplete the massive underwater reserves, basically a bottomless energy supply. But in parallel, the threat of death. Riverside residents tell of swimmers disappearing in Lake Kivu's depths, suffocated by the gas or pulled under.
And finally, at 92, a Malawian musician has found fame on TikTok. The attention has even led to a one-on-one dinner with the president. Laurent Berstecker tells us more.
Giddes Chalamanda is not on social media and doesn't even own a smartphone. But that didn't stop the Malawian musician from becoming a TikTok sensation. At 92 years old, Chalamanda says he's enjoying every bit of his newfound celebrity.
Ndiponso ndikamayimba anthu amasangalala nazo ndipo amavina kwambiri ndipo kundifupanso makobiri pokoni kuposa salary.
In the fall of 2020, Chalamanda recorded a reggae version of his song Linihu, which he'd written 20 years prior as an homage to his daughter. The song was an immediate hit on YouTube and even more so on TikTok, where it quickly became viral and has been viewed over 80 million times. Now Chalamanda can't go outside without being recognized, and his young fans often feel inspired by the 92-year-old's energy and wisdom.
I like Chalamanda's music because he's an old guy, and obviously he knows a lot more to life. So, like, he shares his life experiences and a lot of sensible things in his songs.
Over the past few months, Chalamanda has received dozens of offers for concerts and was even invited to dinner by Malawi's president. But the musician has yet to receive any royalties or compensation for his viral social media videos.
Oh, he's so cute. One more fan here, that's for sure. Though that is all the time we have for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us, and do so again if you can. Take care.
In the past few days, tensions have flared in Mali. Anti-French sentiment and increasing Russian influence are stirring up feelings. This against a backdrop of nationalism and Pan-Africanism promoted by the military junta. Countries in the Sahel are tempted to follow the so-called Mali way path, made of coup d'etat and populism, at a critical time for French military engagement in the region.
La Chine va travailler dans le sens de rapprocher le Mali et le CEDEAO.
Watch Reporters, Mali, the Russian path, on France 24 and France24.com.